the first day of school and the smell of pear shampoo. I still remember that smell. Cheap, pear-scented shampoo from a kid's brand. A little synthetic, a little too sweet. But in her hair, it smelled like something sacred. On our first day of school, she stood in front of the mirror and asked me to help brush her hair. I was afraid to touch it, not because of her hair, but because I didn't want to mess anything up. She called me by name back then. Not Dad, just, Frank, can you help? And something in me trembled. I wasn't her father, didn't have the title or the legal right. But I had something else, presence. She was 5 then. Her mom, Rachel, was exhausted. From the divorce, from the betrayal, from too many lonely evenings with nothing in the fridge but boxed wine and leftover takeout. I didn't come in as a savior. I was just a guy who could fix a wobbly table and didn't ask too many questions. And slowly, we became something like a family. That first day of school, I got up before everyone else. Made pancakes, brewed coffee, ironed the wrinkles out of her little backpack because she was afraid she'd look weird. She said to me, "You act like a dad." I didn't say anything back, just smiled and straightened her collar. I never tried to be her father. I just showed up. Always. At the pharmacy in line for antibiotics. Beside her bed at night when the dreams turned dark. I kept her crayon drawings in a special box. Helped with her math homework when Rachel had to work late. Paid for dance classes. Never asked for thanks. I just wanted her to grow up knowing that someone was solid and steady beside her. When she was 8, she broke her arm. Her biological dad didn't come. I was there, sitting in a hard plastic chair in the ER, watching her shiver from fear. I cracked dumb jokes to distract her. She squeezed my finger so tightly I had a bruise the next day. But I didn't pull away. Later, when she fell asleep from the painkillers, a nurse asked if I was her father. I said no, but I signed the paperwork anyway, because someone had to. At her 9th birthday, she asked if I'd sit next to her when she blew out the candles. I made her a melon-flavored cake because she told me once that melon was her lucky fruit. I remembered every little thing, how she loved warm socks, how she was terrified of clowns, how she breathed slowly when she read. I wasn't her dad, but every breath of hers lived inside me. I carried her backpack when she sprained her ankle. I taught her how to change a tire when she got her first car, a beat-up Corolla I bought from a mechanic I trusted. I sat on cold bleachers during her softball games, even when she didn't invite me. And every time she said, "Thanks, Frank," it stung. Because what I wanted, what I ached for, was to hear, "Thanks, Dad." But I never asked. Because love isn't about titles. It's about what you do. In middle school, she started pulling away, not out of anger, just teenager stuff. I saw it in her eyes. The openness faded. She stopped asking me things. Closed her bedroom door more often. Changed the music she listened to. Kept her notebooks hidden. And then he showed up. The real dad. Greg. Rachel's ex. Suddenly interested, now that the hard work of raising a child was nearly done. He brought her a new phone, a college hoodie, said all the right things. She laughed. I stood in the kitchen listening to her call him Daddy. I tried not to let it show. I was Frank, the fixer, the pancake maker, the silent background character, not the leading role. When she got her college acceptance letter, she ran to show Rachel. Then she messaged Greg. I saw the text by accident. "Dad, I got in." 3 exclamation points. I read it and walked out to the backyard to mow the lawn. Anything to keep from crying in the house. You know what I did that night? I ordered her a mini fridge for the dorm. Double-checked her health insurance. Set up the payment schedule for half her tuition. Because I was Frank. That was my first real lesson in fatherhood without the title. Being the man who shows up, never asks if he's loved, and leaves quietly when the room grows cold. And the worst part? She didn't do anything wrong. She just grew up, and her world got bigger. And in that bigger world, my space grew smaller. I could feel it. In the way she stopped sitting at the kitchen table, in how she no longer asked me to fix the drawer, in how Greg appeared in her text threads with emojis and casual, "I got you, kiddos." And I faded. Not because I was bad, not because she was ungrateful, but because sometimes life quietly erases the people who kept it together. A father only on paper. I could tell something had shifted the day she started calling him Dad in front of people. Not Greg, not my biological father. Just Dad, like it had always been him. I heard it the first time at her senior awards night. She was talking to one of her teachers, pointing across the auditorium, and she said, "My dad's over there." I turned instinctively. For a second, I thought she meant me. She didn't. Greg stood by the refreshment table, chewing gum and wearing a leather jacket like he was still 25. He nodded toward her like he'd just walked in from a movie set. That's when I realized he'd never needed to earn it. The title, the affection, the easy way she smiled at him. All he had to do was show up late to the party, and suddenly he was the guest of honor. Meanwhile, I'd built the stage. I'd been the one who stayed, the one who picked up cold medicine at midnight, who sat in traffic for hours to get her to orthodontist appointments, who stayed up rewiring her bedroom lamp so she could read at night without the overhead glare hurting her eyes. Greg missed birthdays, missed recitals, missed the week she had mono, and could barely lift her head. And now he just waltzed in, bought a lamp for her dorm, and everyone clapped, including her. I remember packing her car for college. It was hot. Nebraska, in August, hot. The kind of heat that sticks to your neck and makes your shirt cling. I was sweating through my t-shirt, fitting the last box of bedding and hangers into the trunk. Greg showed up 10 minutes before we were supposed to leave. He had Starbucks and a new Bluetooth speaker for her. She squealed when she saw him. "Dad, you made it!" I held the car door open and smiled like I wasn't dying inside. Greg handed her the drink, patted her head like she was 5, then looked over at me and said, "Frank, thanks for doing the heavy lifting." Like I was the mover. I said, "No problem," and wiped my hand on my jeans. The sweat made my palms slick. I didn't want to shake his hand and feel the difference. On the drive to campus, Jenna sat in the back seat, earbuds in. Rachel sat up front, talking about traffic and meal plans and roommate agreements. I just focused on the road. When we got there, Jenna hopped out with excitement. Greg had followed us in his own car. He parked crooked and left the hazard lights blinking. The three of us hauled her stuff up the stairs. Greg made jokes about being too old for this. I didn't laugh. Rachel took pictures. I stayed quiet. Jenna gave me one of those half hugs you give your boss on their last day. "Thanks, Frank," she said, already turning away. "No, I'll miss you. No, love you. Just thanks." As if I'd been the guy who changed the oil and fixed the garage door. And maybe, to her, that's all I ever was. Later that week, I got a text from Rachel. "Greg's offered to help with tuition. Jenna's thinking of putting him down as her primary contact. Just FYI, FYI. As if it was a shipping update. As if my 17 years of sacrifice could be summarized in 3 letters. I didn't respond. I just stared at the message until my eyes burned. I'd already wired my half of the payment. Already checked the campus map to make sure she wouldn't get lost her first day. Already drafted an email to her advisor to ask about tutoring options in case she needed help in Chem 101. But sure, let's make Greg the primary contact. The guy who forgot to show up to her junior year science fair. The one who sent her a thumbs up emoji when she told him she got her driver's license. By the end of the month, she stopped texting me completely. No updates, no, hey, I made the team, or classes are good. Just silence, like I'd been put in storage. A box labeled childhood, tucked away in a basement nobody visits anymore. I told myself it was normal, that kids grow up, pull away, need space. But there was something different in this silence. It wasn't distance, it was dismissal. She wasn't just outgrowing me, she was replacing me. The next time I saw her, it was Thanksgiving. She walked in with Greg's new girlfriend, a blonde woman with 2 white teeth and an expensive handbag that didn't match her outfit. Jenna hugged her like family, sat next to her at dinner, didn't even ask if I still made the cranberry sauce she liked. I did. She didn't touch it. Greg brought a store-bought pumpkin pie and got more compliments in 10 minutes than I had in 10 years. He told stories, used the wrong names, called her old music teacher Mrs. Green when her name was Mrs. Graham. Jenna corrected him, but gently, like it was cute, like he was trying. I excused myself after dessert, went to the garage to check the propane tank. What I really did was sit in the cold concrete and breathe through clenched teeth until my hands stopped shaking. I remember staring at the workbench, at the dusty little jewelry box I'd made her in woodshop when she was 13. It was still there, still unfinished. She'd lost interest halfway through the project, said she'd finish it later. She never did. Neither did I. That night, after everyone left, Rachel asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired. She looked at me the way you look at a stranger in the waiting room. Vaguely familiar. Not worth the conversation. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it tick. The sound was uneven. One blade was loose. I knew how to fix it, but I didn't move. Because that's when I realized something. I wasn't part of the story anymore. I was a footnote. She had a dad now, on paper, in public, and in the places that mattered, I was gone. Not dead, not bitter, just erased. There's a t-shirt I haven't washed in over a year. It's gray, soft, stretched thin at the collar. One of those cheap promotional shirts from a local hardware store, with the logo nearly peeled off from too many cycles in the dryer. Jenna used to wear it to bed when she was a teenager, said it smelled like me. Like sawdust and aftershave. Like the garage when I was sanding something for hours with the radio too loud and the door cracked open just enough to let the dog wander in. I found it last week at the back of her old closet, balled up behind a pile of forgotten hoodies and a curling iron still in its box. I held it to my face before I even realized what I was doing. It still smelled like my work. And for a moment, for one stupid, fragile moment, I let myself believe she might come back. That this whole silence was just growing pains. That she'd walk through the door, ask for her favorite pancakes, fall asleep on the couch during a movie we'd both pretend to hate, but secretly liked. But the house stayed quiet. Because she was never coming back. Not really. Rachel said not to take it personally. She's just finding herself, she offered one night, absent-mindedly flipping through a magazine she'd never buy anything from. You know how kids are at that age. Independent, self-centered. She'll swing back. Swing back. Like I was a vine she let go of mid-jump. She's with her dad right now, Rachel added, as if that explained everything. She's catching up. He missed a lot, you know. Yeah, he missed a lot. And I paid for it, literally, emotionally. With every Frank, can you pick her up from dance? And Frank, can you take the morning off for parent-teacher conferences? And Frank, can you stay home with her while I'm out of town? I never said no. Not once. Because every time she called me from the school nurse's office, or handed me a crayon drawing of a smiling stick figure family with me in the middle, or whispered, "You're the best," before heading to bed, I thought I mattered. Not as a placeholder, not as a convenience, but as a dad. Funny how quickly a title can dissolve when someone else finally shows up to claim it. Greg didn't have to earn her. He just had to exist. And once he decided to show up, everything I'd built, every tiny gesture, every dollar, every 3 a.m. drive to the ER, every apology note I wrote on her behalf when she forgot to turn in assignments, disappeared like fog when the sun hits it. I stopped checking my phone for her texts. The messages I used to send, just simple things like, "How's Chem?" or "Did the lamp finally arrive?" stopped getting replies. I told myself she was busy, that college life was overwhelming, that she'd write when she had time. Then I saw her latest Instagram post, a selfie in her dorm. New shelves, a new throw blanket, a tapestry with moons and stars, things I didn't recognize. And in the caption, "Built this with Dad, couldn't have done it without you." I stared at that photo for longer than I want to admit. My stomach tightened. I'd offered to drive out to help set up her space. She said, "Greg's got it covered." Just like that. No explanation, no hesitation. She'd replaced me, frame by frame, the same girl who once cried on my shoulder after losing her first hamster. Who begged me not to throw away the pine cone collection she swore she'd turn into Christmas ornaments. The girl who wore my old flannel jacket because it made her feel safe. Gone. Or maybe hidden somewhere inside this new version of her, the one who didn't look back. I went into the garage that night, opened every drawer, touched every tool. Tools don't forget you. They don't move on or stop answering texts. I tightened a few bolts on the bench vise just to feel the tension in my hands. Then I found her softball glove, tucked inside a Rubbermaid bin under the workbench. She hadn't used it since junior year, but I'd kept it. Re-oiled it every spring like it might matter someday. That night, I sat on the back steps and smoked one of the cheap cigars she gave me for Father's Day when she was 15. She picked them out herself, said they smelled like the garage but fancier. I didn't even like cigars, but I lit one anyway. Let the smoke drift up into the dark, where stars should have been but weren't. The ember glowed bright for a second, then dimmed. Like us. At some point, Rachel slid the back door open and leaned out. "You okay?" she asked, not really asking. "Fine," I said. Always that word. It's easier than honesty, less messy than saying, "I miss someone who still exists. I miss being her person." Rachel didn't push. She never did. She went back inside, let the screen door slam gently behind her. I sat there until the cold bit through my shirt. I thought about that t-shirt again. The one Jenna used to steal from the laundry. The one that smelled like glue and wood dust and sweat. The one that, somehow, still smelled like love. I folded it carefully like it was something sacred. Placed it on the top shelf of her old closet. Closed the door slowly. Then I went to bed. Alone. Still Frank. Never Dad. And outside the wind picked up again. There's a kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It expands inside your chest like fog, dull and wet, settling into the corners of your lungs until you forget what fresh air even felt like. That's what it was like after the call. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. I was rinsing out my thermos at the kitchen sink when Rachel walked in, phone pressed to her ear, nodding along like she was on some mundane work call. She didn't make eye contact. Just mumbled, "Yeah, sure, of course," into the receiver, then set it on the counter without ending the call properly. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then dropped. "She's moving in with her dad," she said. "That's all." No explanation, no preamble, just dropped it like she was announcing we were out of milk. I stood there, hands dripping over the sink, staring at the faucet like maybe I'd misheard her. "What?" I said, almost whispering. Rachel looked at me finally, but not directly. Her eyes darted past my shoulder like it was easier to talk to the cabinet behind me. She wants to try living with Greg for a while. Said something about reconnecting. You know, making up for lost time. Reconnecting. That word. Like their bond had simply been unplugged by accident and all it needed was a power strip. I dried my hands on the towel, slowly, methodically. My knuckles had gone white from gripping the edge of the counter. I didn't even realize how hard I was holding on. Reconnect, I repeated, tasting the word like it was sour. After 15 years of missed birthdays and text messages with thumbs up emojis, Rachel didn't respond. Just crossed her arms and turned back toward the fridge like the conversation had already ended. She says she's old enough to choose, she added. Old enough. Sure, old enough to choose the man who couldn't be bothered to show up for her graduation, who forgot to send a card for her 17th birthday and sent a meme instead. But now he's ready. Now he wants to reconnect. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't demand to know when this decision had been made. I just nodded once, barely, and walked out of the room. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed we hadn't really shared in over a year. Rachel still slept on her side, but emotionally, we'd become polite roommates, the kind who coordinated bills and avoided eye contact in the hallway. I looked over at her dresser. On top of it sat the jewelry box I'd made Jenna for our 5th Father's Day together. She'd picked out the wood at the store with me, chosen the paint, lavender with flecks of gold. We'd sealed it with too much gloss, and the inside still smelled faintly of polyurethane. She hadn't touched it in months. A thin film of dust dulled the shine. I ran my finger across the lid, left a clean streak behind. That felt metaphorical. In the closet, behind shirts I didn't wear anymore, I found the thick envelope marked, Jenna, fall term. Tuition was due in 2 weeks. I'd planned ahead, as always. Financial aid covered some, but the rest was split between Rachel and me. We'd agreed. We'd mapped it all out. I carried the envelope downstairs, set it on the table, then went to my desk. Sat down slowly, turned on the desk lamp, logged into the bank. And then I did something I thought I never would. I removed my name as co-signer. Click. Logged into the college payment portal. Canceled the automatic draft from my account. Click. Went into my email drafts and deleted the message I'd written last week. Do you need anything for your dorm? Click. And then I sat there. Just sat. Not doing anything. Not moving. Just letting the silence press in. Outside, the wind picked up. The trees creaked. The windows groaned like they knew something was breaking inside the house. When I turned off the lamp, the click of the switch echoed like a gunshot. In the hallway, I passed Rachel carrying a basket of towels. She didn't ask what I was doing, didn't even look at me. And that was the softest goodbye I'd ever received. No words, no tears, no slammed doors. Just quiet clicks in a hallway that didn't stop me from walking through it. The next morning, I drove Jenna's mini fridge out to her dorm. 3 flights of stairs. No elevator, of course. The dorm smelled like instant ramen, dry shampoo, and whatever body spray was trending this month. I hauled it up by myself. She didn't offer to help. She barely looked up from her phone. Thanks, Frank, she muttered, thumbs dancing over her screen. I nodded. Set down the fridge, a box of dishes, a toolkit she wouldn't use. Inside, her roommates giggled at something on a laptop. One of them looked at me like I was the Uber Eats guy who brought the wrong order. Jenna adjusted a cactus on the windowsill. She used to tell me when it sprouted a new arm. She used to name her plants. You good? I asked. Yeah, she said. Just settling in. Greg might swing by later with a lamp. Mm-hmm. That was all I said. No sarcasm, no questions, just noise. Greg might swing by. Of course he would. I stood there a second longer, letting sunlight spill over her desk. One of her books still had the bookstore receipt tucked inside, untouched, unopened. I could hear her roommates laughing, one of them doing a bad British accent that grated my nerves. I didn't say goodbye, just tapped her shoulder gently and walked out. She didn't follow me, didn't ask if I got the parking fine taken care of. I did. $37. Already paid. She'd never know. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because I still cared, even if I shouldn't have. And when I got back in my truck, I sat for a long time staring at the glove box. Inside was a manila folder, final proof that I had once again picked up the slack. I'd wired the rest of her tuition from my own account. Not because she asked, not because she thanked me, but because someone had to. I folded the receipt, placed it beside her old softball photo. The one where she smiled so wide, braces and all, that my chest nearly caved in from pride. Then I drove to the bank, closed the shared student account, took the remaining balance in cashier's checks. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed the act. I needed the finality. The drawer closed, the door locked, the silence earned. I used to believe there was always a second chance, that people came back around eventually, that if you gave enough, stayed long enough, showed up enough, it would mean something. That love, especially the quiet kind, was like gravity, unseen but inescapable. I don't believe that anymore. The day I walked out of the bank with those cashier's checks, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt finished. Like a man who had finally set down the weight he wasn't supposed to carry in the first place. Rachel didn't ask about the payment. She didn't even ask where I'd been. She'd stopped asking things weeks ago. We sat in the same house, ate in silence, and passed each other like co-workers in a building nobody really wanted to be in anymore. That Friday, Jenna called her. I was outside tightening the bolts on the porch rail when I heard Rachel's voice echo faintly through the kitchen window. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of voice you use when you're trying to keep things from falling apart in real time. No, sweetie. I thought Frank. No, I haven't talked to him either. I thought maybe you had. A pause. Then, well, Greg said he'd handle it, didn't he? Another silence. I know he said he would, but sweetie, sometimes people don't follow through. That was the moment. The exact second it cracked. Not loudly, not explosively. Just a quiet fault line running through the center of everything Jenna thought she could rely on. That evening she called me. I didn't pick up. She texted, "Frank, please. Something's wrong. Can we talk?" I saw it light up on the screen. I let it go dark. It wasn't punishment. It was protection. Mine, finally, after all this time. The only boundary I ever set. Rachel tried too, left a voicemail laced with equal parts panic and guilt. You didn't have to do this, Frank. You knew tuition was due. You knew how important this semester was to her. Are you punishing her or me? What kind of man just disappears? I didn't respond. Instead, I packed a small duffel bag, just a few essentials, and drove north. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even take my phone charger. Just me, my truck, and a thermos of gas station coffee that burned my throat all the way past the county line. The cabin wasn't much. One room, propane stove, no Wi-Fi, no service, no reminders. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. Back in town, Rachel was unraveling. I imagine the silence bothered her. Not the lack of noise. She'd lived with my quiet long enough to know it wasn't about volume, but the lack of control. The realization that she couldn't undo this one with a phone call or a sigh or a sideways glance across the dinner table. And Jenna, She was learning. Slowly. Painfully. She learned that dad didn't always mean dependable, that promises with emojis aren't worth much when the bursar's office is threatening to lock your account. She learned what it felt like to stare at a balance she couldn't pay, call after call going to voicemail. Greg sent one last message. Sorry, kiddo. Things are tight right now. I'll make it up to you. I swear. He didn't. By then, she'd stopped checking. Emily, her roommate, offered to lend her money. Jenna refused. I'll figure it out, she said. But the truth was she already had, just not in the way she expected. She figured out that I was gone, not out of malice, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. She figured out that some exits don't slam shut. They just quietly drift closed while no one's paying attention. And when you finally reach for the handle, it's not there anymore. She tried again, one last time. Dad, I'm sorry. Please just say something. That word. Dad. The one she hadn't used before. Not with me. Not when it counted. I read it, sat with it. I thought about replying. I thought about saying, you were always my daughter, even when you forgot. I thought about telling her where I was, about offering a last wire transfer, one more rescue mission, one last time to be the guy who shows up. But I didn't. Because love without recognition isn't love. It's servitude. And I had finally stepped down. The last thing I ever fixed was a birdhouse. Cedar frame, hand-cut, painted a soft sky blue. The kind Jenna loved when she was 9 and thought colors could change the world. I carved the perch from an old drawer handle, sanded it down to a soft curve. It wasn't a big project. Took me a day. But it felt like something. Like a punctuation mark at the end of a long run-on life. I hung it on a tree outside the cabin. Watched a chickadee hop inside, then dart back out like it didn't quite trust what it found. Fair. I wasn't sure I trusted myself anymore either. Inside, the phone sat on the windowsill. Dead for days. I hadn't charged it. Couldn't bring myself to. The screen was blank, but I still caught myself glancing toward it, like the muscle memory of being needed hadn't faded yet. But no one was calling anymore. Rachel had stopped trying. Her last message was short, frayed at the edges. You were right. I just didn't see it then. Take care. And Jenna. She hadn't messaged since that final please. She must have known. They say grief moves in stages. But they forget the last one. Silence. Not peaceful silence. Not relief. Just nothing. A flat line where something used to beat. Back in Omaha, I imagine Jenna moved into a smaller dorm. Picked up shifts at the bookstore. Ate cereal out of mugs because the bowls were too expensive. She'd figure it out. She always had grit. She just forgot who helped her build it. I don't know if she kept calling Greg. Maybe she did. Maybe she let herself believe he'd show up eventually, that he was just busy, that he meant well. But one night, probably around mid-November, I picture her sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at a text he never answered, and whispering to herself, he's not coming. And I wonder if she finally understood. Not just what I did, but who I was. Not the man who brought her flowers, but the one who checked her brakes every winter. Not the man who said the right things, but the one who never left. Until she told me to. There's a stretch of time between sunset and true dark where the sky turns purple. That's when the world feels most honest to me. Like it's not pretending to be anything, just shadow and air and quiet. That's when I sit outside the cabin, on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the wind run through the trees. Sometimes I think I hear her laugh, like an echo buried in pine needles. But I know better. It's memory playing tricks again. Muscle memory of being needed. The other day, a letter arrived, postmarked from the university. No return address, just my name. Frank. Inside one page, folded neatly. It said, I was wrong. I see it now. You were never just Frank. You were every late-night ride, every science project, every hug after a nightmare. You were my father, even when I didn't say it. And I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to come back. I just needed you to know. I remember everything. That was it. No signature. Just the slow, painful handwriting of someone trying not to shake while writing. I read it once. Then again. Then placed it gently inside the drawer of the nightstand, beside the box of old softball photos and a packet of unused stamps. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I didn't go looking for her. Because that's not what I do anymore. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying. It's stepping back. Quietly. Without making a scene. Not to teach a lesson, not to punish. But because the door only opens one way, and they were the ones who closed it. I still think about her. I still know her favorite fruit. Still remember the name of her hamster. Still have the receipt for that fridge, folded into a perfect square, tucked behind a map I no longer need. But I don't wait anymore. The world has moved on, and so have I. The birdhouse stays full now. The cabin stays warm. And I stay whole. Not because someone needed me, but because I finally needed me. So no, this isn't a sad story. This is the story of a man who loved completely, gave fully, and then, when it was time, let go. That's the last thing I ever fixed. Not a fridge, not a birdhouse, not a tuition payment, but myself.